So yeah, welcome to our Gateway webinar. And I have only a short announcement before I give it to Julian and to our next brainstorming session. So not announcement, some chances. I don't know whether you have seen maybe or you received the newsletter from Science Gateways, from the Institute. And we have the possibility, or you have the possibility to apply for cloud resources if that's something interesting for your research, to get cloud resources for free, play around with them. So if you want a hint, URL, just come back to me. So that is a chance at the moment to get resources.
Is this Jetstream?
No, that is Cloudy Cluster.
On Google.
Okay.
From Google.
Oh, all right.
So that's
so free resources from Google.
Yes.
Oh, all right.
So that would be maybe interesting for some people just to try out. So there is a short application for that.
Oh yeah, I see it. Yeah. I didn't look at the email before just now.
No, that's okay. And therefore I wanted to say it because there might be also the idea if one of you tried it out, I would be happy to hear about the experiences and how we can improve that, or how it went, if it's interesting for your research. Because yeah, these are the things. Google, resources would be nice in between. I know it's sometimes a little bit too expensive to use it for.
Yeah.
They're also looking for reviewers, so you don't want to apply.
So yeah, just have a look, and happy to, as I said, to hear some experiences, and maybe we can have a longer program together with them or something. Yeah. So that was one point. And the other point is, of course, we, okay, I shouldn't say that in general, but we really like our brain trust exercise, I think. So we will call it only now a little bit different, because the focus week of Science Gateways is using it as a module in the future and also offering it to the community. And of course, you can be part of it also there, just to make it a difference, because this is our webinar, and because that will be a learning module, or a different module. They asked me to call it different on our call, and I thought maybe something like expert circles, we just call it our brainstorming exercise. So we can vote on names, or you tell me names you like for it, and we can still call it internally a little bit brain trust, but just to make clear for people, this is not the module which is in the focus week. That was with the name, just a discussion, and I was like, what, we are flexible, we can rename it. No problem there. Okay, and that being said, I give it to Julian.
Russ, I was going to say, in case, I don't know if Annelies was here last, maybe you could just explain what the point of the exercise is and roughly the format, and then I'll
Oh, of course. Oh, sorry. So for everyone who was not on the last call, so this is a brainstorming exercise. We called it brain trust before. That was the topic I shortly talked about. So the idea is to bring a challenge, a problem to a group, to this group, and describe what you're struggling with, what you have tried maybe before, and then to get ideas from everyone. That can be, just also asking questions about things, what goes, what is not clear, but it can be also just a brainstorming, and there's never a wrong question or a wrong answer. It's just what comes to your mind, And we made already positive experiences with it because we all have different point of views, and it's sometimes someone brings this topic to the round. You sometimes go with yourself and your group in circles because you are working in this project or you are working already long on it. So that the idea is really to gather ideas from other people and get different points of view. And it works quite well. So we could do it. So we discussed it in the last webinars whether we want to do it very spontaneously, that you don't see the topic in advance. And we had both approaches. One we did quite spontaneously, that we decided that we at least have a little bit of preparation time, and Julian had prepared for the last webinar already 2 topics. And we were so energetic about the first topic that we didn't come to the second topic. So we do the second topic today. So, and that was exactly what I, thank you for posting it again in the chat. And I think now I let it take you from here.
Thank you very much, Sandra. I'll share my screen so that you can, and I will be explaining what the problem is, the challenges that we're facing, and then I will stop talking, and then I will listen to what you have to say. So, but feel free to ask me, as Sandra mentioned, ask me questions to find out more about this. So, Sandra, do I have screen sharing permissions? I do not.
Julian, this is Annalie in LA, and I'm on the phone. Is this something that I can contribute to without seeing the screen, yes, or is it hard to? Okay.
Yes. No, I will explain it in English. You may just not see me taking notes, but it will be. I will basically try and capture the advice that somebody is going to say out loud. So you shouldn't be hampered.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, just double checking that everybody can see my screen, particularly nomenclature.
Yes, looks
good. Okay, and so just to quickly cover the background of this, I am a software developer, and I have been working on cloud computing for researchers since 2016 when I joined CIVERS, National Science Foundation funded project. And about a year ago, I joined College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at the University of Arizona, and working on what I think is like a spiritual successor of the Exosphere product, also built to help researchers leverage cloud computing resources. Standing on the shoulders of giants like Exosphere is useful. It's helped us a lot. And the problem that we're solving with Exosphere is what it's called, is we're more closely integrated with OpenStack. And so from the beginning, I think when Exosphere started back in the day, I guess it was easily 10 years ago, OpenStack didn't exist, or if it did, it was very obscure, and they were using Eucalyptus, which was an Amazon EC2 compatible open source private cloud platform. And then Exosphere was always designed to be platform agnostic. You should be able to plug in Google Cloud or Amazon or something like that behind the scenes. And so their terminology doesn't necessarily adhere to what OpenStack calls these things, which brings me to my second non-technical challenge that I'm putting in front of this esteemed panel. And that is, what do we call things? I don't know if you've ever heard the computer science aphorism. The 2 hardest problems in computer science is naming things and cache invalidation. And I think that there's a subtle joke in there, but English is not my first language. So, but naming things is, it's the bane of programmers' lives. And especially when I think I am not a researcher by trade, I'm a software engineer. And I know what things are called on OpenStack, but I've come across multiple situations where the naming doesn't necessarily make sense for an end user. So now we have this thing, how, for something like Exosphere, which is designed to be, you should be able to use Exosphere to start a server, for example, or an instance, we'll get to this, and then switch over to Horizon, the built-in standard OpenStack user interface, and be able to continue doing your work in there, or vice versa, maybe use the command line API. OpenStack already has defined terms. They may not necessarily make sense for researchers. So there's this interesting balance between, do we call things the same as OpenStack in order to, when people switch back and forth between OpenStack tools, that they will not be, well, you know, Exosphere calls this a virtual machine and OpenStack calls this an instance and Atmosphere calls it this thing. How do we reconcile this problem? So a good example, for example, I did integration with Exceed with Jetstream to make Atmosphere work with the allocation systems and projects that Exceed give out for researchers. And so the word project was so overloaded because there's a project in OpenStack, which is, I guess, like an allocation group, and you can have a PI who's in charge of that. But that's not the same necessarily as a project that researchers are used to, or necessarily even exactly the same as what Exceed considers to be a project. And it was, oh gosh, I remember when I started at Cybers, it took me 6 months just to get straight, okay, what thing are you talking about when you say this word? So coming from an end user perspective, I as a software engineer, this is a common problem. I forget that I don't have the same language as the people using the application. Okay. So now we have various things like servers, instance, like do we call it a server instance or a virtual computer? And if we choose one, and for one audience, like maybe a computer science engineering researcher may understand what we mean when you say this, but will a geneticist understand it, or will an astronomer understand it? So it's tricky. So there's an issue on our GitLab repository, issue 64, opened 2 years ago. An example of how long running this issue is. So now this is, I guess, one of our trickiest non-technical issues, which is naming things. So for Annelies' benefit, I will read some things out here. So server versus instance, image versus operating system, flavor versus size, key pair versus SSH public key, user data versus boot script, fixed IP versus internal IP, floating IP versus public IP, limit versus quota. And sometimes they're the same, and sometimes they're not. So I was going to say, I guess the thing is we don't want to choose words that conflict wildly with what, say, OpenStack uses, or use a word that is used in OpenStack for something else. Have anybody of you run into this kind of situation before, or any ideas? Do you have any questions for me? I can also share a screen that, for example, shows the OpenStack nomenclature, if that'll help. I will now mute myself and answer questions, and I will take notes. I hope that is enough background.
So first of all, thank you, Julian. One suggestion from my side to move maybe in this space, because it's hard to discuss nomenclature when we are not looking maybe at specific, as you said, specific ones. So maybe let's, my suggestion would be to select a subset. The ones which were the toughest for you. for example. Is there a set where you say, oh, this is critical, this is a critical, let's say 4 or 5 expressions we could really discuss, because otherwise I think the set of possibilities is too big to come up with ideas.
I agree, it's a good one. And I will pick my favorite bugbear, which is project. And that might be, if this is too hard, then I can move on to another one. But project for me is a tricky one. It's come up multiple times. I'll scroll down here to the most recent one. So I'll read this out loud. So about 2 months ago, I was doing a user test with somebody, and I was helping them. They wrote, not sure if this is a bug, should I report it? But I successfully logged into the Exosphere app. I didn't see a project for some 4-letter government agency, so I clicked new project. It went back to the launch screen where you select the provider. I couldn't open the login page again, so I shut down Exosphere. I relaunched and entered my credentials. So what came out of this is, I wrote a comment here. It's not apparent that a project is something that an OpenStack administrator needs to create on behalf of unprivileged users. So there's a little bit of background. In OpenStack, a project is a way to group accounts. So users, you can belong to multiple projects. It's a way to set overall quota and limits on a particular group of users. It's a way to share, say, maybe private operating system images. So, and within a group and not outside the group. It's a way to share access to servers. So if a server or a virtual machine or an instance, one of those, is launched inside a project, then anybody in that project can access that. So it's also a way to have some sort of a bit of security and privacy around your OpenStack resources.
Okay, so
how is it different than a team? Is it more than just a team then?
It's a good question. It has elements of a team because you can have members of a team, but then you can also have the only problem is that sometimes you may get a project that is not a team. You can get it per user. Some of these providers will have essentially a single person project in order to isolate those resources. But I like that. I haven't thought about team before. Some of the other options were things like OpenStack Cloud, but that also doesn't really make sense because you tend to think of as an OpenStack. You can think of multiple projects on an OpenStack cloud, but I hadn't considered team.
What about workspace?
Sorry, say that again.
Like workspace, since workspaces can have many for individuals, so teams is sort of always more than one. But
I'm making notes here. Okay, so project.
Hub0 has a project too, which is owned by a team or an individual, so it's a similar problem.
Was that HubSpace?
Hub0?
Hub0. You have to, when you create a project, you have to remember whether you're creating it for a team or for yourself. They're very different. So
okay.
Confusion's widespread.
Workspace for and can be for an individual or team. Okay.
I really like also the idea of the team and the workspace because it makes it clearer to an end user that it's not about the project idea. It's like you have a workspace. The only thing, since you mentioned the problem of the end user So one thing what comes, and I know it's not about naming, but why do you give the end user, if they shouldn't create this, the option to create it?
Oh, that's a good point. Let me bring up the user interface of Exosphere, just so I can confirm myself what it is, how we actually phrase that. So what we do is we have an add project button, and you can't see this. So I'm going to share my screen here. Whoops.
Probably have to reshare to page or something. Yeah.
Let me just go share screen and Exosphere share. Okay, so you should be able to see my. This is the Exosphere user interface. This is a really good example. Each of these is a project, and this is on Indiana on the Jetstream OpenStack cloud, and this TG CCR 190024 is the Exceed project designation for an Exceed allocation that I have, and I got to it. There's the same one, for example, on TAC, so there are multiple clouds. Then Cyberus also has an OpenStack cloud called Tombstone Cloud, and I have multiple projects here. So you can see on Tombstone Cloud, I'm on CA Experiments. I'm also on CALS, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences.
Julian, can you a little bit describe the screen for Emily?
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So on the left-hand side, there's a menu bar. You can think of it almost like Slack, where you have multiple Slack. What do they call them? Workspaces.
Channels.
So actually, in this case, it would maybe be workspaces because they're like
right. It used to be called Teams.
They're called Teams now. Oh gosh.
They used to be. Now they're workspaces.
Okay.
They're called spaces now.
Okay. So in this, so on the left-hand side, I have IU, I have TAC, I have Tombstone Cloud CA Experiments, Tombstone Cloud CALS, Tombstone Cloud Demo, Tombstone Cloud Mac Field Scanner, and Tombstone Cloud TerraRef. So all different projects that I belong in. They have different amounts of quota and different collaborators. And then in the very bottom of this list, there's an Add Project button. So you would, this is the problem that this user ran into. They clicked on Add Project, and they tried to add an OpenStack account, and because they did not see their government agency name in the left-hand menu bar. So they clicked on Add OpenStack Account, and they just saw this screen, which is Add an OpenStack Account, and add Keystone Auth URL, which is the standard place to log to where OpenStack reads its credentials, the user domain, a username, and a password. You can also paste in some file here. Or you can, if you have a Jetstream account, you have your TAC username and password, you can also add it this way. But so there is this button, Add Project. And so somebody said, what was the question about adding a team? Or maybe we shouldn't use the word project here?
So the question was, say the administrator should do it for the end user. Why you show the Add Project button to an end user?
So, okay, so the little bit of a background here is, this is not a hosted application. This is not provided by something like Atmosphere. This is not, like if you went to Atmosphere for Cyberus and you just log in with your Cyberus credentials, you would immediately just see your projects that you have access to. If you log into Atmosphere for Jetstream, you will see the Jetstream thing. In this one, this is a desktop application. It's like an Electron app, or it can be a static HTML hit hosted on GitHub pages or something like that. And I can add any OpenStack provider, including a test account that I might create on a machine under my desk. And so unlike say Horizon or Atmosphere, where all the work is already done, and you just have to log in with your credentials. Here is, you have the option of mixing and matching across different providers. So that is why you have, well, okay, we don't have to. So far, this is why this exercise is so useful, because we do have on the roadmap a single sign-on feature that we would like to do, so that you can log in with your your Exceed credentials, and then have access to all your maybe Exceed OpenStack projects automatically, or log in with your Cybers account. A bit like the open, oh gosh, what is that? CI login? CI login, for example, being able to log in with your credentials.
Right. Yeah.
So
But,
yeah, seeing that now, only saying one of the possibility would be here, maybe it's add resources and not a project, because it's more about the resources. Adding
resources, okay. I'm going to make notes of two of these things. And I should probably share my whole screen. Swapping back and forth. So that's, thank you very much for the, so there's two good suggestions so far. Okay, so why?
Can a project exist without any resources? Or is that part of the creation process?
So that's the tricky bit. So I'm going to make here single sign on. Right. So I need to create or add a project at all. Or why do we ask a user to add a project in the first place? Good question. And then so I don't know if it was Sean or Stephen who asked, can a project exist before you add it, or can you add it before it exists? Is that what you're getting at?
I mean, do you create a project and then add resources to it, or do you create a project on a resource?
How it works is that you, and a cloud administrator, like an admin generally who has who manages an OpenStack cloud provider, would create an account for you, create a project, add you to a project, set the quota on it, and then give you the credentials to be able to access that either via the API or via Horizon, the normal OpenStack user interface. There are also some like Nectar, which is the Australian research cloud. They have a portal that you can sign in, and then you create an account, apply for an OpenStack cloud resource account. They will do some checking and then send you they'll have a semi-automated process that creates the project, adds the resources, and then sends you an email with the credentials, for example. But yeah, that has to exist first. Some manual, semi-manual, or automated process has to create that. Jetstream has a JTA, Jetstream trial allocation, where anybody with an Exceed portal account can go and click on a button and say, I want 1,000 CPU hours to try out this cloud computing malarkey thing. And then less than 4 hours later, you'll get an email with saying that you have this thing, and click on this link, and then you get redirected to the Jetstream version of Atmosphere. So I hope that clarifies it. So there needs to be some kind of behind the scenes creation of a project, and that includes setting the quota. So like, how many CPUs can I use at the same time? How much memory am I allowed to allocate? How many instances or virtual machines can I run at the same time? Floating IP addresses is another one that's commonly limited. So yes, all of those happen. My network.
That is a demo effect.
Well, it's almost like an allocation.
Sorry, Dan, you were saying it's almost like an allocation.
No, this is Jack, but yeah, it's almost like asking for.
Oh, sorry, Jack.
Right, and then you decide where you want to spend it, so to speak. Right.
Yeah, that's
Well, what about the word host?
Host. So that's an.
It's sort of a different tack, but you were when you were explaining earlier, you were talking about these different organizations, you know, that you organize them by, and it's sort of like those are the hosting, those are almost like the sponsors, right, of the space.
Yeah, and yeah. I'm sorry, I was going to say another one that is sort of in a similar space is a provider, and I don't know that's sort of in that same sort of feel where it's maybe people are used to thinking in terms of their internet service provider or network provider or something like that.
Yeah, it could be misunderstood in that way, but it was just a different way to think about it. I don't think it's necessarily better, but it came to mind.
Yeah, it's interesting because, well, not to get too literal about it, but I'm also a fan of etymology, the background, you know, the history of words, and how words can be reused. And so it is almost a bit like we are guests on these clouds, on these OpenStack clouds run by administrators or hosts. They are kind of our hosts, and we have to play nice.
Yeah.
Follow their rules.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the exceed example, you get an allocation which includes multiple resources. So you got bridges and Comet and on Jetstream, all of which provide some sort of cloud service, right? But you'd be using that same allocation account across all of them, but they'd each be separate resource requests with their own front end. And you can have multiple people using your application.
Yeah. That's yeah. I don't know that we have that. All of these I think are new.
I like that one because it mirrors another platform. You know, if they're using allocation in that platform, if they, you know, I don't know, it's sort of like it's the same label for the same kind of thing in different platforms. So I think allocation, I would do a +1 on that. I think that's a good one.
Plus, if you look at Cloud Bank's concepts, it would be a way to go one level higher, not only for, say, XC resources, but all the way up to the commercial cloud providers as well.
I like it. So I'm having a look at the Cloud Bank website right now, and I'll call things out as I.
It conveys the idea of boundaries too. Like there's an allocation with a set of there's a fence around it. You know, it doesn't define what's in it, but here's your bounded space, right?
Yeah, I like that. It makes it really. And it doesn't have this second idea of if you have allocations, it doesn't convey, at least to me, that it is like a project. Like, oh, I put now my, let's say, PressQT project on it. No, it really refers, it's an allocation on cloud and not a project, not the scientific project itself.
Right. That's what confuses me. I think of a project as a research task.
Yeah, that's actually that project concept of being a project that you work on is what seems to be the most common understanding of it under our users so far.
And I can imagine using multiple resources for one project.
Yes, it's true.
And even multiple allocations.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the frequently asked questions of the Cloud Bank website at cloudbank.org/FAQ. And there's a question, what resources or services does Cloud Bank provide? And then they say, Cloud Bank will provide information, education, training, and allocations for public cloud. blah, blah, blah. Allocation of cloud resources is provided to projects that belong to NSF programs that specify the use of Cloud Bank in the NSF solicitation. So that's interesting. So they use allocation and cloud resources and projects in the same sentence. And I think they do it in a, this makes sense. I think that's probably a good way to, or that belong to NSF programs. So maybe somebody can help me here. What is the, so they say here, allocation of cloud resources is provided to projects that belong to NSF programs. Okay, so can a project belong to multiple programs or no?
No, a project, so a program can have multiple projects. So NSF has a solicitation, and so when you look at the next half sentence, so just reading the full sentence, allocation of cloud resources is provided to projects that belong to NSF programs that specify the use of Cloud Bank in the NSF solicitation. That means solicitations are part of programs. So program is the biggest one. Then in the program can be several solicitations, also with different timelines. And for the solicitations, you write a proposal to get a project. So the successful proposals are projects.
I see, okay. And so it seems like they also, so there's how do I gain access to Cloud Bank is the third question. And they say you can obtain allocations via Cloud Bank.
Typically, you add them to an NSF proposal. So like their Bitcoin version for cloud services.
And it says, and if you requested and were granted cloud resources as part of your project.
So you applied to a solicitation that offered, okay, if you need it for your project, so you can have, so part of this program of this solicitation is that you can apply for cloud resources. And that is, if you applied with your proposal, and you got granted the cloud resources, then you can use them.
Okay, so I think this is promising. It seems like there is the idea of cloud resources or allocation.
Huh? Because you're already dressed? No.
In project management parlance, people who are project managers by training, by like Project Management Institute, a project is bounded by time. It has an end. It ends at a certain time point. It starts and ends, right? That's what defines a project.
And a budget.
So, right. So that doesn't apply in a cloud when you're trying to define the boundaries around what you're creating in this platform. What defines it is the parameters you give it, like who can use it and what resources you put into it and how it's configured and the amount of resources it has. And there may be multiple projects that use that allocation that have different starts and endpoints. So that's another argument against using project and for using allocation, I think.
Thank you. That's a good point, and it does correspond to with how people seem to view projects in this space. So my only well, I guess this is so here is my concern that has prevented me from moving away from the term project, which is that when people use Exosphere for a while, and then they use OpenStack, so they use the OpenStack Horizon interface, they're going to be confronted with this word project, which will now not correspond necessarily to what they were used to in Exosphere. But saying that, you're making a good point. I think that if our target audience maybe I would say 90% may never want to use Horizon. Because Horizon is a tool built for system administrators, not for researchers. In which case, I think this may be a benchmark for how likely is it that people are going to use OpenStack Horizon as well as Exosphere, and is it worth causing a little bit of this impedance mismatch, slightly different terms in some places, in order to make it easier for the 90% of people who don't end up using Horizon, for example?
I would put the burden on the people who know OpenStack. Everyone else will be confused, but they won't necessarily.
Okay, yeah,
Well,
I think this is fair.
I must say I would second that, because if you're an administrator for OpenStack, yes, you know the term project and you know how to use it, and that OpenStack uses it exactly for this. When you come from another side, you don't know that OpenStack, that this is the internal name in OpenStack. So, and project, as you said, is used in so many ways. So the question you had already yourself. So how many administrators would be even confused by it, to be honest, even if the burden is on them? Let's play that through. For everyone else, it's clearer when you switch the name or the nomenclature. And an administrator would now go to this interface where he knows that it's made to make it easier for users. He might even, or she might even expect that some wording is different because it's for a different user group. And you could, I know sometimes I really like this, how, easy and nice it's, the user interface is. I hate it when they're overloaded and people don't find anything, like, in the Amazon cloud and Google cloud, it looks even like that they would like to confuse people with all the different features. So I really like the user interface you have shown us. So, but maybe there is a little bit of space just even having this one. You can assign to the allocation different resources. And if it's a list or examples, then an administrator probably grabs directly, this is what he looks for. Without, it could be something like a small explanation on the left-hand side. And one little thing wouldn't make it too complicated. If it's
Sandra, are you proposing something like a I don't know, like a hover or a tooltip or something like that over terminology, or
so when they have the left-hand side open and they see something like add, let's say, allocation, and there would be, with hovering over it, there would be the sentence, or even you have on the right hand side, then choose a login method, and if you would add something like a half sentence there, the allocation you have. So without, I like the help and the about, but something that is directly there without them clicking on help or about. We all know how little people go normally to help or about, even so it's great that it's there and it should be there when they get stuck. But
the problem with help and about is I usually go there and I see a bunch of stuff I don't understand. I'm wondering if, you were talking about all these different related things have their own nomenclature for similar things. I'm wondering if, it would make sense to have a link, understanding the terminology for OpenStack users, understanding the terminology for Atmosphere users. Kind of like when you're introducing someone to a new language, you say, this is how it looks to program in Haskell if you're a C++ user, right? You leverage the thing that they already know.
So you're talking about like a Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, like a little Rosetta Stone. If you put that in your help, I mean, even if very few of them click there, something like that could help a lot. And if you called it Rosetta Stone on your menu, people would be more likely to click on it because they would say, what the heck is that?
Yeah. So create new thingy, then you have to click the field to see what a thingy is.
Yeah, exactly. If you make it a little bit, yeah, that people get curious.
Or call it quick start. I usually look at a quick start because I feel like I want to start up quickly. Help me get there quicker.
That is also a cool idea. I like the quick start idea, because you're right. If I see a quick start, I always click on quick start. Because then it's like, oh, I don't have to read, you know, the documentation, not the manual. I just go to quick start.
I think people have had enough positive experience with the word quick start that they still want to click on it. Whereas help, they may not have.
Yeah.
Open me first kind of thing, yeah.
And you could almost do like a matrix or a table where you map the term project in this resource to the terms that they might be familiar with in other areas, like was suggested. So it almost like a little table. It'd be very easy to scan and see, oh, that's, you know, what they're calling a project is what they call a workspace in this thing, and I'm familiar with that. I get it, right?
Does Jetstream use the word project in the same way OpenStack does with their atmosphere? I don't remember the word project. Maybe it is.
I think yes and no. Let me.
Actually, I think it does call a project. You're right.
Let me quickly open up a tab. So open right there. So if I go use jetstreamcloud.org. It's taking a while. Okay, then it tells me, oh, actually, let's see what their help says. I'm gonna log in with Exceed and see what they say. So it says, ooh, okay, there's an external resources on the help page that just does not help me much yet. So I would log in with Exceed, and it says, this is your Exceed account. Now it redirects me back to Atmosphere. I'm interested to see what I'm going to be prompted with. Bated breath. So at the top, we have the Jetstream logo on the left, then we have a dashboard, and then we have projects, images, help, admin. Oh, that's a mix. They mix it all up. Okay, so if we scroll down, oh no. Oh, wow. Okay, so this is so then we have allocation sources. These correspond to OpenStack projects and to Exceed projects. These are allocation sources. Then we have projects, which you can create your own and which to group your resources together. So if I go create new project, I can now create a project here and I can go SGCI ambassador testing during webinar. Create it. And now there is this. Now I could create a new instance and it would choose, say, CentOS, development GUI, and then here we go. So Annalie, you can't see this, but now I'm in the dialog for the launching an instance. And there's a project, which I can choose which project to launch in this virtual machine. And I have an allocation source on the right under resources. And here I can choose between apparently 3 different allocation sources, which correspond to Exceed projects or allocations. Yeah, interesting. So it's quite a mix. So okay, I'm gonna thanks for prompting me to try this out. This was interesting. Anybody else notice anything?
So, and the interesting would be to know whether people feel comfortable, for example, with this structure, because this looks already, for me, a little bit complicated for an end user, to be honest. But I might underestimate them there.
But you can usually figure your way around it if you have an account on Exceed, at least.
I'm going to do the equivalent here. So in Exosphere, and by comparison, we have at the top, we have the provider, iu.jetstream-cloud.org, the allocation, tgccr19. And if I go create server, this is one of the less well-tuned ones. So let's say I search for, I want one of the featured ones, J is -API. So let's try this Ubuntu 18 one. I choose it. In this one, to launch one, I only get to choose the name of the server. So let's say SGCI webinar test, and I get to choose the size. So let's say I want a small, and how many of them I want to launch, but let's just say I just want to launch 2. And oops, I have to hide this or move this. And create. And so now I have 2 of these servers building, but I didn't get to choose, unlike in Jetstream Atmosphere, I didn't get to choose which allocation source I'm going to use. I can only launch a virtual machine in essentially this OpenStack project /allocation. But yeah, the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm thinking project is probably the wrong term to use for all the reasons that you mentioned. Okay, sorry. So yeah, this has been.
No, that is exactly what this is for. And I would love to continue at the moment, but we have 4 minutes before the end of the webinar. I know, it went really fast. This hour was really fast. So the question would be from my side, if anyone else would like to prepare a challenge for next time. And I will send out also an email. Otherwise, without putting the burden too much on you, Julian, if you have a couple of more of these nomenclature, because I think this is also something we all can learn from. Communication is the big thing with scientists and between, and I always try to avoid, the typical slang, computer science slang and everything. I'm not always good in that. So this could be a good exercise for us. So if anyone feels comfortable to prepare something, maybe would you all be interested? And I know that Julian wouldn't be offended if you say, no, nomenclature he did it this time. Let's do something else next time. He will be fine with that.
Yeah, actually, no, I would like to, I would prefer if somebody else did something next time. So, yeah.
Oh, sorry for putting you, yeah. No, good. That is the other side. Of course, you can also say, oh, this were already now nice hints, and I think I know how to continue. Otherwise, yeah, I would have a challenge for next time, if nobody else would like to do it. But I will send also an email, and I think this was great. It shows every one of us so much. It's really hard to find the right names.
This was, again, so useful. I shouldn't say unexpectedly so, because it was so useful last time as well. So and so I think maybe that if as an encouragement for other people who are hesitant about trying this, I've seen this done 4 times now in different contexts, and it's a really good exercise, and it gets you out of maybe a rut or a fixed point of view, and helps you think in different ways. So wholeheartedly recommend it, and hopefully
We could rename it Words with Friends.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining, and we will have our next webinar in October. And I would say I wish you to stay safe and healthy, the typical thing at the moment. Maybe we have a vaccine at the end of the year. That was our discussion at the beginning. Maybe.
That's what Fauci says. Maybe.
Maybe. So yeah, I will send a program around for next time. A little bit. Yeah, you know me by now. Probably not already next week, but it will come. Okay, great. Thanks, Julian. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.